But so many doctors diagnosed me with so many different things, and I've been given such a runaround now that I don't really, I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't really trust doctors that much anymore. It's kind of been my impression that if it doesn't fit the perfect mold of an illness, then they just don't know what it is, and they'll either give you meds to try and, like, here, take this, see if it helps, or they'll just say you're perfectly healthy, or say it's all in your head, one of those three. So anyway, the worst part of my symptoms were actually in May of 2008, after I had been living here for a couple years, just essentially just going to doctors and working part-time at a mattress store every, like, 2 days a week. Just a couple hours every week, not much. So, and it was just enough to pay for my student loans. But in May of 2008, I was on my way to work, and this nutritionist that I was seeing at the time had me on this extremely strict diet where I was only eating, essentially I was only eating protein and some fiber. There was no carbs, barely at all. So no fruits, no sugars, no grains, no pasta, no bread, you know, anything like that. I was basically just eating meat, nuts, and green leafy stuff, but with no condiments, no flavor. The only condiments that I could put on any of it were basically salt and pepper, so it was extremely bland. And any of my friends will tell you now that I eat some really strange things, and that's because after doing that, everything tastes good. Eating a strawberry is like the sweetest, tastiest, juiciest food on the planet. I don't even want sugar anymore. So anyway, I was on this diet and he was pounding me full of protein. I was supposed to eat a piece of protein or meat the size of my fist every single 2 hours of every day as long as I was awake. And I was also taking like 10 to 20 different supplement pills with every meal. Well, I should say three times a day, because I was eating tons of meals. And that was a pain. And on my way to work on May 20th of 2008, I started feeling this panic. Now, I had had some panic attacks before when I was in college, and my dizziness was just starting. I'm pretty sure they were classic panic attacks. But this thing was way more extreme. Way more extreme. Doesn't even compare. It's like comparing, it's not even comparing apples to oranges. It's like apples to orangutans. It's just absurd how much stronger this thing was. And by the time I got to work, it was in full-out panic, and about an hour after that, it hadn't subsided at all, and I was actually laying on the floor of my boss's office because I could barely move. I couldn't stand at all. I was cold, shivering. I felt like I was vibrating and shaking all over. My hands and feet were numb. I could barely breathe. It felt like I had an elephant sitting on my chest. It was so hard to breathe. I actually thought that I was going to die. I said my final prayers right before I called 911. So that was really difficult, and the interesting thing about it is that it didn't stop there. I ended up going home. I didn't go to the hospital or anything because the EMS guys, when they got there, they said, well, there's really nothing that we'd be able to do given your prior history. Since nobody knows what's wrong, we're not going to find it. So you could go to the hospital and we could admit you, but it's just going to cost you money, and all we'll do is just watch you. So I ended up going home. My parents drove, not me. There's no way I could have driven. I could barely even stand up. I had to have someone help me out of my place of work at the time. But anyway, when I got home, it had died down slightly, but it picked back up that night, and it didn't stop from then on. So I had this like extreme. It was like a panic attack, except 10 times worse. No kidding, because I've had panic attacks before, and I know what they feel like. This was way, way worse. And it went on from that day, May 20th of 2008, until sometime around March or April of 2009. Constantly. Day, night, while I'm asleep, while I'm awake. So I basically lived on the couch at my parents' house here for that entire duration. I lost over 40 pounds. I actually was down to 135 pounds, which is 20 pounds lighter than I was when I was in shape and skinny as a stick in high school. So I was tiny, which is why I have almost no muscle. I'm like a string bean. So when that started clearing up and dimming down very, very slowly last spring, all I wanted to do was just get outside and move around and hang out with my friends, because I had missed so much just being on the couch doing that. I'd wanted to hang out with them so badly, but I was under so much stress from whatever was wrong that I couldn't hang out with them. Every once in a while my friends would stop by and I loved seeing them so much, but it would torture me, both in the fact that I couldn't do stuff with them and in the fact that my symptoms would flare up extremely high, even worse than they had been just laying there whenever people would stop by. So I was being tortured whenever I hung out with my friends, and it was horrible. But so I took up disc golfing when I started feeling better in the spring, and then I started building some cool gadgets and gizmos, a lot of environmental science types of things that I'll show you in later videos. But and that kind of brings me up to date. Essentially, I got to feeling a little bit better. I got to the point where I could drive only on days when I was feeling good enough. Most days I would not be feeling good enough. I'd be either too dizzy, too tired, or have too many other strange symptoms to drive and feel safe doing so. But every once in a while I could go into town and hang out with my friends that live just a couple miles away. So that was really nice. And now it brings me to where I'm at now. I still have a whole onslaught of symptoms going on that most of them started when I had that whole panic thing, the extreme panic thing going on for many months there. I developed a whole bunch of different crazy symptoms, and I'm still getting them. Some of them have dimmed way down and almost gone away. Some of them are still just as bad as they were when that was going on. I get this weird vibration feeling all over my body sometimes. Sometimes it migrates, moves around, but it kind of feels like you're sitting on top of a big speaker system that's amplifying the sound of a bumblebee up. So you're just kind of buzzing all over the place, and it's a really creepy feeling. Of course, I've got extreme tiredness and fatigue. I almost always feel like I'm pulling all-nighters every night, regardless of how much sleep I get. I'm very dizzy. Still feels like I'm standing on a boat in the middle of the water, although it's even worse now than it used to be. Oh, good grief. There's so many of them. It feels like I'm very twitchy. Sometimes when I go to like look at something or reach for something, it's almost like an exaggerated reflex where I just kind of like that. Almost like if you've ever woken up in the morning and you slept on your arm wrong or something like that, you know, and you like have almost no control over it. You like go to shut your alarm clock off and you just kind of flail around and knock your alarm clock off the desk and it rattles around on the ground and something like that. It's kind of like that, except it's all over my body. Like everything's kind of exaggerated and out of control, almost like you're drunk or something.